everyone, and welcome to A Heart to Heart with Adoptions from the Heart. My name is Amanda Aliberti, and I am an adoption social worker at Adoptions from the Heart. We are really excited to continue these awesome podcasts that we've been doing, and today we welcome Asia and Muthoni. So welcome, ladies.
Hey. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you guys want to start off with just giving a brief overview of who you are, where you're located, and when you placed your child for adoption? Asia, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so my name is Asia. I am in Delaware. I placed my son Sullivan for adoption technically August 25th, 2018. So he just turned 2. And I've been with Adoptions from the Heart technically since I've been pregnant, so a little over 2 years now.
Great. And can you just briefly describe the type of open adoption you have?
The type. Okay, well, of course, it's open adoption. Right now, we have we're supposed to have 2 visits a year, but we I guess we're like kind of slow moving because everything was through the adoption, and then like we went to emailing back and forth, but everything was still kind of, a little through adoption, a little through email, and then we exchanged numbers a few months later, and now everything is texting. And then just recently we got social media, so everything's kind of slow moving. We're just trying to make sure that we're comfortable before moving to the next step of our journey, I guess.
Wonderful.
So we are very, very close. We talk a lot now.
Great. And Muthoni, how about for you?
So I'm Muthoni. I'm in Texas, and I placed my daughter in November of 2016. So she just turned 4 last week, actually. And we have an open adoption. We have visits twice a year, typically, except this year because the Rona. And we text pretty often. We video chat, email. So that's kind of what our post placement looks like.
Tell us about that project.
Yeah. So I started a podcast this spring with a fellow birth mom friend of mine, Emma, and we were approached by Gladney actually about starting a podcast where we bring on birth mother guests and just share stories essentially, and just educate people about what birth mothers are and like that we're normal. And so it's been really awesome to get to know so many different women and with different stories, but we all share this bond of loss. And I'm super excited to see where it goes as we keep going on. But if y'all ever want to listen, it's Birth Mothers Amplified. We're on all platforms, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook at Birth Mothers Amplified.
That's awesome. Well, we definitely are going to check that out. Asia, spread the word to the other ladies. I think that's an amazing resource for people to have. And the fact that you guys do it on your own is also kind of cool. I think there's something to be said about birth parents chatting on their own. So I love that. Did either of you feel any like sort of pressure, whether it was outright from friends, family, if anyone knew? I'm not sure if they did know or not. Or did you feel any sort of pressure just as a woman in like today's society of how you felt like you should have handled that pregnancy?
Yes and no. Okay, so my mom, I'm really close with my mom and my grandmother. And though, of course, naturally, your parents are going to be a little disappointed. Like, you're supposed to be married with, before you have children and that type. So they were disappointed, especially since I already have a daughter I'm parenting at home. And they were just like, why are you having another kid? So, but I had already thought in my head, like, this is the process I'm going to go. This is the journey. I'm not going to do abortion. Not that I'm shaming that, but I'm not going to go that path. So though they were disappointed, they were like, well, what are you going to do? Because I had already had a plan, it wasn't so much pressuring from them. It was just like, well, we want to be there with that step. Like, we want to know everything that you're doing. And then as far as society, I think I put more pressure on me as a woman than actual outside society, because I didn't really tell anybody and I didn't really look too much into it. But I felt that I let myself down, and I felt that, like, granted, I couldn't really do too much because it was an abusive relationship, so I couldn't really help it too much, but I still felt like, something I could have done somewhere to not be in the situation I was. And of course, I know that's not true, but that's how I felt at that time. So it's kind of yes and no, not pressure like purposeful, but it's just that I put on myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm not sure if I had a ton of pressure. I know I had a lot of shame that I felt coming from the different people in my life. Because again, like Asia was saying, I wasn't married, I didn't do things the right way, quote unquote, which that's crap to me. But, and so I definitely, for me, abortion was never an option. And I also knew that parenting was an option because where I was in my life at that time, I just was not in a stable place where I felt like I could provide for a child. And so I did know about adoption. And so for me, it was, I guess, I knew enough to where I wanted to at least explore and see what that could look like if I did make a decision to place. Because I'd never met any like birth parents, families, but I'd never seen the other side. And so that made me a little bit nervous, but I knew enough to see like, okay, this could be an option for me.
Mm-hmm. Do either of you feel, sometimes people say that culture or heritage, how you're raised, what your roots are, sometimes that can play against you in terms of like decision making when you are faced with an unplanned pregnancy? Was that true for either of you? Or what is your response to that rather?
It didn't really play too much of a part for me. I won't say yes and no. I know I'm gonna have a lot of yes and no's. My family does have a history of teenage pregnancies, and granted, I never was a teenage mom, but being a young and unmarried mom, they kind of were just like, you're supposed to do better than us. So that kind of played a part. However, again, I do have a child that I'm parenting at home, and I did take a different route than they had, and they say a better route. I'm still like, maybe. They say a better route. So I felt that I did do a little better, even though it wasn't, the best decision. But I feel that me placing was the best decision that nobody in my family ever had thought of, let alone actually thought it was an option before. So that made a huge difference in our family life.
Okay. For you?
That's a really good question. I think, honestly, my upbringing was one of the reasons I chose to place. I didn't have the best upbringing, and history was essentially going to repeat itself if I chose to parent. And so for me, I wanted my daughter to not have to walk the same path I did. And so I guess in a way, I guess my family history did play a part with my decision.
Okay. Can I ask each of you?
Did I answer the question?
You did. Can I ask, because I never like to assume, each of you identify what race that you identify with, and then what race of the adopted parents you ended up placing with?
I'm African American, and the adoptive family is Caucasian.
Okay. For you, Muthoni?
So I'm Black, or I'm actually full blood Kenyan. I was born in Kenya. And then my daughter is biracial. And so her birth father is half Latino and half white, I guess. Yeah. she's interracial, I guess. And her parents are white.
Okay. Can the two of you touch a little bit on that concept of transracial adoption? Because a lot of people, especially in today's social climate with the Black Lives Matter movement and just the idea of raising a child of color in today's world, can be challenging. And making sure that child has the right resources is a big topic of conversation. So I'm curious how the both of you feel about that, especially since you both placed your children with Caucasian adoptive parents.
That's been a topic a couple times. I definitely, when I placed my son is completely African American. When I placed him, I didn't think twice about race. And for some reason, I feel like I should have, but I never did. And it was more so like when I was looking through profiles, I was just like, what vibe am I getting? And when I actually saw the video, I was just like, that's exactly what I was feeling from my picture, which is weird. Talking to them, exactly how they were with each other, because it's a married couple, how they were with each other, the views and values that they had and wanted to pass down to their child was exactly what I wanted to pass down to mine. So it just kind of did. And then like later on, I was like, we're different races. And it was weird. And I was like, you can see it, but I didn't really think twice about it. And of course, when all of this started happening, I'm just like, I wasn't as scared for myself or even my son as I was for them, because people are so mean. People can be so evil. And I'm like, if they're just literally trying to live their lives, they're just literally trying to raise their child. And I know that somebody is going to call them names or call him names or something like that. And I'm just like, I'm so scared of, the how what would happen, or anybody just showing those evil sides of themselves. And just like I would be for anybody, but I've never necessarily been fearful for a different race, to be honest. I never have been, and this is the first time I actually had those feelings. And I wasn't exactly sure how to express that to them, so I was kind of surprised when the birth mom, I'm not sure if I should say her name, but the birth mom, the adoptive mom, she reached out to me, and she was just like, first of all, she talked about the election, and then she talked about, the Black Lives Matter, and she was fearful for me, and she was just like, well, we love your son no matter what, and we're just making sure that he is safe, that we're doing everything, that he knows that his skin color is beautiful, but it's not the only thing about it. Like, everything that she said just in text message form was like, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel like most parents should treat their kid, like whatever color you are. And that's exactly what she was saying to me. She was like, he's beautiful. He's our son, period. We love him. And I was just like, well, why couldn't I message you that? So I just like getting that feedback. I hope I've answered your question.
It sounds like the adoptive mom kind of reassured you. You were starting to feel some sort of way, especially with everything going on. And then she reached out to you, which definitely showed, her dedication as a mother for sure. But that maybe helped alleviate some of the fears you were having.
Definitely did. Of course, I'm always going to be fearful of outside people, and that's never going to change. I will be fearful for anything. But just knowing that they would genuinely lay their lives down for him was just like, that's all I could ever want in any parent to do for their child, whether it's by adoption or by birth. That's what any parent should do. So I'm really reassured by that.
For you?
So similar to Asia, when I was looking through profiles, race was never something that I really considered. I didn't care what they looked like, as long as they were going to love my baby. And so to me, like, I just judge them off of their character, right? I do remember wanting to ask about diversity in their community or in their family or just in their circles. But at the time, my support system was not the best. And they deterred me from even asking about that. They said that didn't matter, like diversity didn't matter, as long as they, quote, love Jesus. And so looking back, obviously that was horrible advice. And I am thankful because even though that's not a conversation that I had with them prior to placing my daughter with them, they do have shown me that they have diversity in their community, in their church. They, you know, the shows she watches, the toys she plays with, the books she reads, you know, they really do everything that they can to immerse her in her culture. And that I'm super thankful for that. As far as like this year and just everything that's been going on, we haven't had a super direct conversation about it. But I'm okay with that. I feel like I've seen enough from them at this point to where like I haven't really needed to have any like direct conversation about the current events. So
yeah, I can understand that.
What would either of you say to so say I had a client, I had an African American birth mother who came to me and she placed her child with a white family. She was having serious concerns, just a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, especially in today's social climate. What would be your advice to her of how to help reassure her?
My first thing is don't force any decision at all. Work if you see somebody, if you see a prospective family, don't just be like, well, you want to travel, I want my kid to travel here. Like actually feel them. And if you don't have that same vibe, if they're not exactly what you would want for your child, then don't force that. Even for adoption, if you're unsure, take time to think about it. And because it's not something that you could just reverse and, it never happened. Unfortunately, time machines don't exist yet. It's really think about it, process, talk to yourself. I talk to myself a lot. I know I look like a crazy person all the time. Like actually talk and think it through. If you have a support system, like get feedback. I know, like Muthoni would say, she didn't really have that support system, so I'm sure you were probably talking to yourself too, trying to like reassure her, think about it. It's like I have technically Amanda, and I had my sister to kind of bounce ideas back and forth, and I was just like, because there's some things that you might think of, or that somebody else might think of that you might not. So it's good to talk to somebody. I would say like take your time, as much time as you can take before you just make the decision.
I actually had a conversation with a birth mom friend of mine who's Black as well, and when all of this started happening, and she was just distraught and just terrified. She was like, I don't know if my daughter's going to be okay. And her daughter's parents are also white, and it's hard because we've made this decision, right? Like it's out of our hands. Once we sign those papers, that's it. Like we did it. We made this decision, right? It's all we can do is hope that everything we saw leading up to signing those papers is correct, that that they are the people that they say that they are. And so if I could go back, I would, and I love my daughter's parents, obviously. I would ask more questions, more detailed questions. I think that's something I can definitely say to like any prospective parent, expectant moms, is any and everything you can think of, ask it. And then once you're into the adoption and you've placed and you're in this post placement period, if you have any other questions, if you're nervous about bringing something up, then go to whatever agency. Like I know I can go to GladMe anytime and talk to my caseworker and say, hey, I want to have this conversation, but it's a little awkward. Would you be able to like mediate, because if there's openness and transparency and communication, that's what's going to be the best for everyone, right? And so, yeah.
You bring out a good point, because in my experience of working with expecting moms, would you guys say that there's some level of like, I don't know if shyness is the right word, but there's this level of like, you don't want to ask too many questions as an expecting mom, because I hear oftentimes like, oh, I'm just so grateful that they're here and they're wanting to take my child and all these things. And I'm kind of like, well, that's great, but I want to also make sure you're checking off in your head all the things you want to know about this family. And I do sense that there's just a level of like, I don't want to ask too much because I don't want to come across some type of way to them. Would you guys agree? Do you have any thoughts or reactions to that?
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
I'm normally shy. Well, I have my shy moments, but especially if I'm talking to somebody new, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be too personal, which doesn't make sense in this situation at all. It does not make sense. Right. It's supposed to be personal. But I'm just like, if I ask this, are they going to like shy away from me? Are they going to be uncomfortable? Are they going to be like, you know what, forget it, I don't even want it anymore? Like, I just don't want to be that person, and I don't want to say something, and they're just like, what are you talking about? So like, I know it's very easy to shy away from certain questions. It's so easy. I still do it now, and I'm like, it's been 2 years later. At this point, there's literally no such thing as TMI. Like, so, but oh yeah.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Asia. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're go ahead.
Oh, you're done? Okay. Well, I think part of the shyness, well, I guess before the decision is made to place, I think the shyness comes from, we want them to like us. One thing I always say to hopeful adoptive parents whenever I speak on panels is, as birth mothers, we know you're going to obviously love and accept our child, but are you also going to love and accept us, right? And so we feel, and I'm not speaking for birth mothers, I'll just speak for myself. I know I remember feeling like I have to say the right thing. They have to like me, And so, and I think a lot of birth mothers or a lot of expectant mothers can probably resonate with that. And then after placement, after we've, given our child to these people, the power is now in their hands, right? So we no longer have the power. And so I think that's where then the hesitancy, the shyness, the fear, or whatever it is comes from, is we don't have the power in this relationship. And until the adoptee is of age where they can hopefully be allowed to lead the open adoption, the parents have the say, right? And so I know I'm super thankful that with my daughter's parents, we do have very open communication and transparency with each other, to where for the most part, I can go to them with anything. I still get nervous sometimes, but for the most part, I feel like I can. And so, but I know not every story is like that. And so I don't know if it's something that during the training process for hopeful adoptive parents, whether that's just something agencies need to say, like, hey, y'all need to chill, y'all need to be more open to your birth moms, I don't know. And then also on the flip side with the expectant moms, I think expectant moms need to know that they can advocate for themselves. And then also as you enter into being a birth mom, you should also be able to advocate for yourself as well, and not be so fearful, because then that's not healthy, because then decisions are made out of fear and not in a good place. And so
absolutely, I'm so happy you brought that up, this idea of the shifting of power from the or birth parent to the adoptive parent, because when that shift happens, I think there is this sense of loss that a birth parent experiences, and may start to feel like they don't have control anymore to be able to make decisions or ask the right questions. And I think you also bring out a good point of making sure the agency, the caseworker, who's ever involved, is advocating for you and making sure that even in those moments where maybe you're fearful of asking certain things, they're stepping in and asking those things for you to kind of help guide you. Because I mean, this is one of the most difficult decisions and most powerful decisions of your life, right? And we want to make sure that you're fully, as fully as you can be, confident, right? You're never 100%, but it's really important that that happens. So I'm happy that you brought that up, because people don't realize that shift in power causes a lot of changes amongst everybody.
Yes.
Were you going to say something, Asia?
No, I was just agreeing.
Just agreeing. You talk about support, Muthoni. I'm curious what type of support, you each kind of started to mention it, but what was most helpful for each of you before, during, and after placement of your child?
So when I was pregnant, during my pregnancy, my support system was my daughter's birth father's family. And during the process, they appeared to be a support system. Looking back, I saw there was just a lot of just craziness going on. And so, but when you're in it, you don't really see it. And then post placement, I have a really good friend group. A little bit background on myself. I kind of, I guess, severed connection with my biological family just because of my mental health. Just things were not good. I just needed to say I'm done. And so I've kind of had to build my own family within my friend group, essentially. And now I just got married last week, so now I'm building a family. So, thank you. Yes. So just over the last 4 years, I've found really good support within just my friend group, and then also social media has connected me with so many different birth moms and different just support pages, and so that's been really beneficial for me personally. Yeah, and therapy has been everything. Yeah.
How about you, Asia?
I need to go to therapy.
Girl, get in there. Get in there.
Oh, I already know. Goodness. So my biggest support was my sister, because she literally placed 2 years before I did with the exact same agency. Amanda was her worker as well. So everything was just, oh, you're familiar. Let's talk. And so when I found out, that was the first person I called, like, hey, I have a situation here, and you might understand. So kind of need your help here. And she now we laugh about it, but at the time, I heavily leaned on her. And I was just like, I need to know what you did, what time you did it, how you did it, how many steps did it take you to get from here to your car? Because I need to take them exact steps. It was bad. It was really bad. But her biggest thing was just it's you. You're not me. So, do how you do the code. So that was my biggest support system. And as soon as I decided to actually go to the support group with Amanda and the other ladies there, then now I go every month. And that, I guess that's been my therapy. That's something I genuinely look forward to every month. If nothing else in the entire month, that's what I look forward to. So that definitely helps me through. It definitely helps me, at least before, when I didn't want to think about it, that it will help me think, but in a positive way. So I keep saying therapy now, but support group with that. I didn't really reach out or do anything too much social media wise. I've never been huge on social media in general. And my family now, they support, but they're too goofy, so we don't really talk about it, anything too much. But I definitely heavily lean on my sister Amanda and the support group from there for before and after.
Yeah, Asia was one of the first clients that I really had worked with that I realized how important it was when a woman is pregnant to invite them to those support groups, because oftentimes support groups are for women who have already placed, right? So they come together, they share their story, share their experience. But I think there's something to be said about women facing unplanned pregnancies and coming into this group so they can really educate themselves on what is this going to look like. And we've welcomed women in that have chosen adoption, and we've welcomed women in that have ultimately chosen to parent. And I think that either choice is great. And I'm happy that women have the opportunity to really hear firsthand from other people what it's like, because we can only do so much as an agency, as social workers. But I think that when you can lean on one another for support, there's something to be said about that. So I'm happy that both of you have continued down that road. And Muthoni, I know with social media now, it's just booming with birth parents story. I mean, it's unreal. I think it's opening up major doors in the adoption community. You guys are phenomenal, which is why we're continuing to do these podcasts. So that's pretty neat. Speaking on that, how do you feel like birth parents are perceived in today's society?
I still feel, sorry. I still feel with some people it's still taboo, especially like older generations where adoption just wasn't a thing, or if you know, of course, like when you're my age, but people who may have had their children in the 80s or 90s, adoption was a thing, but it was always closed. Um, like like I said, when I told my mom, she was just like, "What's open adoption? Like, how's that work?" So it for some people, I think it's still taboo. For a lot of people now, I think, especially you're seeing flyers somehow. I'm just like, I never saw these a year ago. I don't know where these came from, but now all of a sudden I see different things. I'm just like, people are learning. And I'm like, people are actually starting to hear, and people are starting to ask questions as opposed to just, oh, that's a bad idea, or that's this, or that's that, or I think this, and just waving it off. People are starting to actually ask, like, well, what is it? And that's fine. As far as I can see, like just having a blank slate or being completely oblivious to the whole thing is perfect, because I'm just like, now I can actually tell you, as opposed to you having this preconceived notion of what it is. And you know, I have to fix that and then tell you and whatever. It's like I like how I do like how social media is booming, because of course word in the grapevine is now all the way over here. So it's like I do like the word of mouth. I do like seeing things on social media. I do like seeing things now on TV, and I'm just like, people are actually starting to become a little more educated, slowly but surely, and that's lovely to see. That's beautiful to see. And I'm like, now, 20 years from now, it's not going to be so taboo. It's not going to be such a negative stigma to it, and that's what I'm hoping to say.
Great.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way, and there's still a long way to go in the adoption community. But as far as like just birth mother stigma, I think people are still, I mean, even to this day, and I'm pretty open about my story. I on social media with anyone who I meet. But I think people, it's still confusing to someone that, oh, you got to pick her parents? Well, didn't you want her? Well, of course I did. Like, I love her so much. Like, yeah, I literally had someone one time be like, well, didn't you want her? No, I didn't. And so I think there's still a little bit of stigma hanging on about birth moms, but I think, like Asia was saying, education is key. I think the more we share stories, the more we normalize it, the better it'll become. Things will get better. So, yeah.
What would each of you say is the hardest part to being a birth mom?
Just missing him. Just is having those milestones happening, and I'm not exactly there. Like, I know of them and I get told, but it's not the same. So those are like hurdles I have to cross every single time. And luckily I'm able to cross those hurdles, just knowing that I did make the absolute best decision for him and myself and my daughter. So it's like I can cross those hurdles, but just knowing that like he's there but not there, if that makes sense. Like knowing that, I could be doing this, I could be doing that, I could show him this, or I'm out doing this right now, and if he was here he would love it, but it's not like that. That's just the hardest part for me. But then I go look at these pictures, I was like, he's doing 500 things I've never done, and I'm an adult and he's 2. So it's yeah. That's not for me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, like Asia said, I think just missing not just even like the big milestones, but even just the day to day, just not being able to be fully a part, of her life and their life. And then also, I think for me too, it's hard when I feel like no one else acknowledges. So like, for example, I got married last week on my daughter's birthday. And everyone wished me, oh, happy wedding day. But hardly anyone was like, oh, and happy birthday. I'm sure today might be a little bit hard. And so like, I can't really fault anyone because she's not fully in my life. So it's not someone that they see all the time that they can like talk about, but it does suck sometimes that like, it feels like she's not important to people as much as she is to me. Does that make sense? And so like, does that make sense? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm so curious. I probably understand why, but why did you choose that? Why did you choose her birthday?
Honestly, it's the weekend that worked. I didn't want to get married. Because we flew to Florida. And so it was like the weekend that flights were good and it just worked out all around. And I was like, okay, because that wasn't my first choice, because I didn't know what that would mean for years to come, whether it would be like this weird, and I'm sure it will be like kind of like a weird day. Bittersweet. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is at this point. So yeah.
I was just curious. What would each of you what would each of you say if you had the opportunity to voice something that you learned from your experience that you feel people still don't get? Something people are just not really understanding, unaware of, not listening. What would you want to tell somebody that you feel like you've learned from your experience as a birth mother?
It was not an easy decision. It was not easy. We didn't just say, here, I don't want him. Here, I don't want her. We never said that. And trust me, we all have cried. Or at least most of us have cried. It was not an easy choice. We all love our kids. And it was a choice because of necessity, not because of just throwing them away. Right. I want people to really understand that it is a choice out of love, out of genuine love. Because if we had a lot of us, I'm gonna speak for myself, and I'm gonna speak, but if if I had kept my son, it would be purely selfish, and I can say that it would have been purely selfish in that situation. So me placing it was genuinely the the best possible decision. So it was not easy, and I still struggle with it. So I want people to understand truly.
Yeah. I when I first placed and like started, the journey as a birth mother, I used to say, well, I just wanted her to have a better life, I wanted better for her. I've come to realize that there's a certain narrative about birth moms that we are not capable. And I think we're fully capable for the most part. I think I could have gotten 3 jobs, figured out a babysitter, made it work, right? Asia could have done the same thing, figured it out, made it work. But I wanted her to have something different than what I could give her, right? I wanted her life to look a little different than it would if I'd chosen to parent her. And I think people people still have a hard time understanding how we can make a big decision like that and be okay with it, but also be sad and also have hard days. It's like, well, you did it, so why are you sad? Get over it. And it's like, no, like our hearts literally got ripped out of our chests, like the first time I laid my eyes on her, I was like, shit, how am I gonna do this? How the heck am I supposed to do this? And so it's that duality of knowing we made the best decision with what we had, but also this sucks. And it's okay to have both. And the reality is it is both, And so
it's powerful. It sounds, Muthoni, like you had a pretty great experience with gladdening. I think you said you placed with.
Yes.
Mike, I've actually never asked this question before, Asia. Yeah. But what do you feel like adoption professionals can learn? Like, what do you feel like we can do a better job of for future expecting and birth parents? What can we do within the adoption community as professionals, social workers, employees at agencies? Any thoughts on what we can be doing a better job of? There's always room for improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I don't know, Amanda. You were amazing, to be honest. You were absolutely amazing. I don't know. I got to think about that one.
Yeah. I think, I had a great experience personally with Gladney, but I do know other women who haven't specifically. I will speak to specifically with like transracial adoptions. I think agencies need to do better with educating these hopeful adoptive parents. I've said these in panels to, these hopeful adoptive parents that you need to start doing the work now, not once the child is in your home, like, okay, now I have to scramble to be, diverse or whatever. You need to start the work now. You need to have those racial mirrors in your life now. You need to be preparing, because you can't say that you're ready to bring in a child of color if you're not. And I think agencies can push harder and train better to ensure that they're, no one's ever 100% ready, but that they are the best ready that they can be once that child is placed in their home, because the person that suffers is the child. And I have just heard so many adult transracial adoptees that, like, they had a good childhood, right? They love the families that they grew up in, but they wish they had more. They wish it looked different. And that breaks my heart. Like, that's sucks to hear that, and that's the reality. So I think in that aspect, agencies can be doing better for sure.
Totally. Yeah, we Asia was actually a big part of it. A few months ago, we started a Black Voices Within Adoption segment, where we really were targeting Black voices within adoption to kind of allow their voice to be heard. And I think that it's an ever going process, and we need to do better. And I agree with you, and I appreciate you being respectfully honest about that, because I think people, especially white folks, are trying to do their due diligence, but we need to do more, and especially waiting families need to do more. So I really appreciate you saying that. Any other thoughts from you, Asia, of ways that adoption professionals can improve?
I think the only thing that I would have wanted, because I was nervous, and I know a lot of people were probably even more nervous than me, if like when a birth parent and an adoptive parent, when they meet, I think like the social worker should have like questions of their own as well. 'Cause it's very easy for, like, you could go in super prepared and like, I'm gonna ask this, and this, and as soon as they're blank. And I think a lot of girls probably were just like, as soon as they leave, they're like, dang, I forgot to ask about this, or dang, I could have said this, I could have even responded with this. So I think a social worker could kind of get the ball rolling with that one and have a list of questions. That way, like I said before, like somebody else could think of something that you didn't think of. So, like if you may have like a Black birth parent and a white adoptive family, and the Black birth parent may not even think about diversity, but that is a thing. That is something that needs to be asked. That is something that needs to be looked at, because even the adoptive family, they could be completely fine to be like, okay, but maybe their family is a little prejudiced with like something that would get minds thinking. So I think that would help.
I totally agree, and I appreciate you you voicing that. I definitely think that's something that can be worked on for sure. Well, ladies, we're nearing an end here, but I feel like we hit on so many powerful topics. I always say to people, the best form of education is hearing from people who have been through it. And I feel like every time I do things like this, where we are spreading more awareness, it just makes me so happy, because like you said before, Muthoni, I think adoption has come so far, but we still have so much more to do. And the fact that birth parents such as yourselves are courageous enough to come on camera and share your stories with the whole world is what's going to make it that much better. So we are so appreciative. We're just so happy that you guys are so motivated to advocate for adoption, for expecting and birth parents. Continue the work that you're doing, because it's really making a difference. And we're just happy to have provided this platform for you guys to share your story. So thank you for being open and honest. I don't think any of us have all the answers. We're just trying to do the best we can every day, right? Well, it was wonderful seeing you both.
Absolutely.
Continue to be safe. It's great to see you guys smiling, and hopefully we'll all connect again soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Awesome.